This is the first car I've driven that's actively tried to kill me. Oh, and then it really wants to go to that corner with the radar guided cruise control system on. It's like someone's tugging at the steering wheel, and it's really unwelcome. Hello and welcome to Andy Likes Cars. In today's video we're going to be looking at the new Toyota Corolla. Now the Toyota Corolla has always been a very stable option, however it's never been particularly exciting. This model aims to change that perception. Toyota in their own words say that this model errs on the sporty side. It's a little bit like Toyota are dipping their toes into what a sporty hatchback might be, but not too much so that they don't offend the cardigan wearing buyers. It's got all these amazing curves and angles everywhere. It's got quite an aggressive front end, and I love the way the light integrates into the top of the grille here. It makes it look like one seamless piece. This is finally a Corolla that doesn't look boring. The Corolla features triple LED parabola headlights with daytime running lights. The ZR and SX trims add LED spotlights, and the top trim ZR has bi-beam LED headlights. Spec GX gets 16-inch alloys. The top spec ZR has 18 inches. Up front there is McPherson strut suspension, and at the rear there is trailing wishbones. Continuing down the side of the vehicle, you can see that there is more angles and creases, continuing the sporty design of this car. One nice feature of all Corollas is the one-touch open of the doors. There's no buttons to push, all you do is open and it's unlocked. So a nice feature to have on the base car. Another feature of the base car is the rear privacy glass. So under the bonnet of a Corolla, which by the way is held up by this stick here, no gas struts of this car, we find a revised version of the Toyota hybrid synergy drive system. In this model it combines a 1.8 litre engine with an electric motor. This gives a combined output of 90 kilowatts and 142 newton meters. This model has a combined fuel economy of 4.2 litres per 100 k's. It does 0 to 100 in a very slow 10.9 seconds, and this is the same for all hybrid variants of the Corolla in New Zealand. Maybe Corolla owners aren't in a hurry to go anywhere. This is a shame because in the UK they have a 2 litre hybrid, but that gets to 100 in 7.9 seconds. Now there is one other engine available. It's a 2 litre petrol with 125 kilowatts. Back, the dynamic sporty styling continues. It's angles galore. There's angles here and here and here and here. Toyota really have tried their best to make this car sporty and dynamic, and I think they've done a pretty good job in succeeding. Of course, being the hybrid model that's badged hybrid, one thing that's missing from the rear of this car is any sign of exhaust pipes. It's almost like Toyota are pretending that this is an electric car. All Corollas feature this nice, sporty, subtle spoiler. It's a nice addition to see on a base model. Just look at how steeply raked this glass is. So the Corolla has these nice wraparound LED lights which look really nice and modern. However, the indicators are pretty standard fare. Now opening up the boot, there's not a lot of space. In fact, this car only has 208 litres of boot space, and the much smaller Suzuki Swift has 242 litres of boot space. Really, there isn't much space to put things. All you can really manage is a large suitcase, maybe a couple of shopping bags and a tent. And that's your lot. That's all you can fit in there. And the rest of the family have to leave their luggage at home. Most other hatchbacks have a lot more space. The Golf, for instance, can easily swallow the extra 3 bags. And the new Civic, well, that has over 400 litres of boot space, pretty much double what the Toyota has. They did a really bad job of packaging this car. In this, there is all this dead space and these big pieces of styrofoam that are just space robbers. They do nothing. And it's not like the components that they hold even really need to be there, because all the components for the spare wheel can easily fit within the spare wheel itself, meaning that all this space here is completely wasted. There's some interesting quirks in the back of this car too. There's this weird orange thing here. I'm not sure what use it is. If you do need to carry more items, you can lower the rear seats. You do this by removing this rather cheap and nasty and awkward parcel tray. And then it's simply a matter of clipping these here, and you have a reasonably flat load floor. So what's it like inside the Corolla? Well, the angles continue. Dashboard is very reminiscent of the exterior design with these angular air vents, which look great. And overall, it's a pleasing if inoffensive design. This is a base spec model, and boy does it let you know. It's covered in black plastic, and not all of it's really nice. I mean, on the door card here we have scratchy black plastic, and even the door handle is black plastic, and down here there is a reasonable sized door bin which allows a normal sized drink bottle to fit inside of, but just touching it you can feel the edges are quite sharp, and it's also pretty cheap in the center console. Once again, cheap plastic, and cheap plastic here. And while there are two cup holders here, which is great for practicality, there's nothing to stop a bottle rattling around. Opening up the center console, which is padded, the cost cutting is really evident. To stop you seeing the big bolts, they've used a piece of felt. Further up the range adds niceties. There's, I think, a leather effect dashboard, and the dashboard itself is soft touch, so that's nice. And the steering wheel on SX trim models comes in leather, and the whole car has leather on the top ZR models. Being as this is a base spec car, this has a urethane wheel. It's a bit cheap and nasty, but it has lots of controls on it. It even has voice recognition. It's got controls for phone, volume, menu controls, and collision alert. Driving position is pretty good. Everything is easy to hand. You feel cocooned by the car. The armrest is in an absolutely perfect position, and the steering wheel is right in front of you, and the dials are easy to see, and so is a view out. You've got wipers on the left and lights on the right, and speaking of lights, this car has automatic headlights, which is a nice feature to have. So the seats aren't too bad in this car. Even on the base model, they're these fairly sporty items with heavy bolstering on the side, and they're reasonably comfortable too. They adjust manually, of course, front and back with a lever under your seat, just like every other Japanese car. So all models get a 4.2-inch touchscreen, and further up the line, the top of the range car gets a JBL system with 8 speakers. Pushing this button here apparently turns on the voice recognition. Navigate to...
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So the voice activation is fairly limited in its capabilities, and it's not a touch on modern systems from Mercedes-Benz like Hey Mercedes. The infotainment has all the usual connectivity with auxiliary and USB and Bluetooth for audio. So here in the back of a Corolla, it's an okay place to be. The seats are very flat, so there's a little bit of bolstering, but not an awful lot. And to be honest, they're quite hard and uncomfortable. I don't think I'd want to be back here for extended periods. There are these integrated drink bottle holders here. There's also this really weird storage cubby right here, and I'm not entirely sure what it's for. It looks like it might fit half a mobile phone. But one nice thing is this armrest here. It pulls down, and it's got 2 integrated cup holders, which is a nice touch. All seats have headrests and are adjustable as well, although with them all up, it really does limit rear visibility. And rear visibility is pretty appalling in this car. Sitting in the middle, it's not awful, but your legs are forced to be spread apart, which is a little bit weird considering there's a hump in the floor, but there's no drivetrain. One reason that these seats are probably quite unsupportive and flat is they're probably quite thin, because apparently the batteries for the hybrid drivetrain live right beneath where you're sitting. You probably could fit 3 people in here at a pinch, but I think it'd be pretty tight. The Corolla has always been known to be a boring car, not one that's ever got anyone's heart racing. And this one to drive continues that tradition, But is that a bad thing? Not everyone's looking for a sporty car. You got to remember that the Corolla is probably the best-selling car in the world. I think it's almost up there with the Golf and the Ford F-150 in terms of sales. They sell bucket loads of these. Around town, it's relatively refined, it's quiet. They say in this model they've increased the insulation to make it quieter and more refined, and I think they've done a good job. This is a refined car. When you start it up and you set off, it usually starts off in electric mode, so it's dead silent, which is actually really nice if you're leaving your house early in the morning and maybe you don't want to wake up your spouse. It's also good for those rendezvous with maybe your mistress. Nobody will know when you come and go. The ride around town is actually nice and smooth. This is a softly sprung car and is quite comfortable. The hybrid drivetrain really makes sense in stop-start traffic because when you stop you're not using any petrol because the engine's not running, and as you set off the battery powers the car for the first little bit and then eventually the engine will kick in. There is an EV mode which will allow the car to go up to, I think it's probably 50 k's an hour for maybe like 2 kilometres on electric power alone, but it's really there as an assistant to the petrol engine. It has to be said the stereo in this car is a little hollow, but once again it's a base model, so with the upgraded JBL you probably get a better sound quality. As we get onto the motorway, there's a little bit more cabin intrusion and actually a little bit more road noise than I was expecting, but it's relatively smooth riding. It's just a little bit noisy and I can feel a bit of vibration through the pedal. Performance in the hybrid Corolla 1.8 is best described as leisurely. It's not a fast car. In fact, I don't think the speed was ever a factor when the designers made this car. If I want to overtake, well, it does it, but goodness, there's that heart-stopping moment when you put your foot down and nothing happens. It's like the engine has to say to the gearbox, would you please give me some power? And that's one problem with this car. It has a CVT. And like all CVTs, it's the work of Satan himself. It's a device that robs the engine of any fun or excitement.
Caution.
This car has radar-guided cruise control. Maintains a very, very, very safe distance between the car and front. There's no BMW following distances here. Turning the steering wheel for me and it's going around the corner. It does feel awfully slow though. As traffic speeds up, do we speed up? Yes, we do. We're speeding up. We're getting awfully close to the centre line though. Oh, it actually feels to be a bit of a weaver. It's funny, it's telling me that I'm close to the centre line even though it's got active steering assist, so go figure. You're about to have an accident, but I could avoid that for you, but I'm choosing not to, is what the car is saying to me right now. And it really loves getting closer to white lines. It loves to hunt left and right. Oh, and then it turns off, and then the steering assist fails. I think systems like these are supposed to make driving easier, but genuinely it makes it more terrifying, disconcerting, and heart-stopping. Honestly, the system's pretty flawed. It's pretty rubbish. I wouldn't trust this for 5 minutes. It's a little bit like a naughty kid. You know, you leave it in the room, the kid says, yes, I'll behave. Come back 5 minutes later, it's drawn your family on the wall of your house with permanent markers. Its radar-guided cruise control cannot be trusted. It's so much easier if you just do it yourself. Are you steering? Yeah, on a normal road, this doesn't really work. It's almost steering me off the road there. I don't think the system's brilliant, I've got to be honest. It's, I mean, the road looks pretty straight and it managed to find a corner in it, so... Oh, it is steering me towards a big scary truck. Oh, this is the first car I've driven that's actively tried to kill me. Oh, and then it really wants to go to that corner with the radar-guided cruise control system on. It's like someone's tugging at the steering wheel, and it's really unwelcome. Oh yes. Okay, so we're on some bouncy roads. Whee! It's a bouncy castle on wheels. Ooh, yay! Bounce, bounce. You do have to drive anywhere bouncy. You have kids in the back and you want them to vomit, then this is a car for you. Let's see how well it does on maybe twisty roads. I'm going to go to Clevedon. Right, here we are, 55 going, indicated 90, and it goes holding it really nicely. Actually, really fine. It doesn't handle bad at all. And it's doing a reasonably good job of going around these corners. I mean, this is as fast as I feel comfortable driving, and yeah, it's doing it for minimum fuss. It actually handles really well. It just does it with no excitement. It doesn't really make you feel excited. I'm more impressed it can do it rather than actually enjoying doing it. It's completely sanitized. There is no feel or excitement. It just gets on and does it. If you want a car that's completely devoid of frills when driving, then this might be the car for you. You know, despite the fact it's gutless, it's not terrible to drive. And for the performance enthusiast, there apparently is a 200 kilowatt hot hatch coming next year. So overall, what do I think of this car? It's the dullest car I've ever driven that's actively tried to kill me. Easy to drive, it's a bit boring. It has great fuel economy. The boot's a bit crap. It's cheap though, and it's well made, and it'll probably last a very long time because it's a Corolla, and it'll be very reliable, which is really important for the modern day car buyer. If reliability and fuel economy and longevity in a vehicle are your top things that you want in a hatchback, then this might be the car for you. Would I buy this over a Golf, the new Golf 8, or a Honda Civic? I'm not sure. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.